Everyone, this is A Bit of Business. My name is John FitzGerald, and on behalf of LearMedia.tv and the British and Irish Trading Alliance, welcome to the show. Our topic today is sustainable solutions, a subject that is particularly relevant right now as we are literally right in the middle of COP26. Our special guests today are Neal Maxwell, Stephen Jones and Tom Cotter. Gentlemen, thank you all for joining me. And by way of introduction, Neal Maxwell is the founder of Changing Streams, whose mission is to reduce the amount of plastic used across industry and in the construction sector in particular. After spending 30 years in the fit-out industry, a trip to the Arctic in 2018 brought him face to face with the unpleasant reality of the downstream effects of plastic pollution and global warming, and his life has not been the same since that epiphany. Changing Streams was established in partnership with the University of Liverpool and is run as a not-for-profit organisation. Neal passionately believes that by reducing the amount of plastic used, we can make a positive impact in reducing waste going to landfill or into the ocean. Stephen Jones is the CEO of EnviroTech Energy Management and a design engineer in mechanical engineering with 25 years experience in renewable technologies. He's been a board member of 2 UK utilities and led the development and deployment of over 200 megawatts of solar and storage projects across the UK and Europe. He was a developer himself for a number of years in solar and battery technology, so has a very clear understanding of the sustainable energy marketplace. Tom Cotter, welcome back, is the founder of OceanR, is based in Cork in Ireland, and is on a mission to reclaim the oceans by removing as much plastic as he can to recycle it into eye-catching, boldly designed clothing using eco-friendly materials and plastic-free packaging. He spent several years researching sustainable production methods that could contribute to the reduction of plastic pollution in the seas. And he is a firm believer in partnering with companies who want to go on a sustainable journey with him to make the biggest impact possible. So, broadly speaking, gents, you have three very helpful perspectives. Tom, you are fast becoming an expert in the retail sector. Neal, you know construction pretty well. Stephen, you're an expert in the renewable energy space. So from these different perspectives, what is the state of the nation when it comes to sustainability? Where are we winning? And where do we need to improve? Neal, first with you on this one, please, then Stephen, and over to Tom.
Right. Thanks for the introduction, John. It was very kind, and appreciate your really good words. Where we are at the moment, I think we are making good headway, certainly with the carbon initiatives. We're seeing now through COP26 some new targets being set and agreed by various countries around the world. I just wonder whether it's happening fast enough. The industry is certainly responding to this agenda, but I still feel, quite frankly, that industry is driven by finance rather than by the environmental factors, and we need to bring those into the equation more readily and bring them into front and center of our businesses rather than being run by profit and loss. To be judged by success, to judge success by profit and loss is I think, that's at its day. We need to bring the environment into play now. We're making good headway with carbon reductions. We're seeing new policies and planning initiatives coming out now. We've had a look at a few papers that are currently being considered to affect the planning permissions in terms of driving plastic reduction programs, which is a positive thing. We also speak to a lot of companies that are focusing on tier one contractors, for example, that are focusing on the single-use plastic elements, which is highly important. I mean, quite frankly, I think they should be reclassified as hazardous waste because the very fact that they say single-use means you can use it once and throw it away. Well, as we all know, there's no throwing away plastic. It's in the environment for 500,000 years. So we need to broaden that now. We need to look at the wider picture of the plastic impacts, and we need to consider all plastics rather than just single-use plastics. And there is a movement now moving towards bringing the plastic question into the carbon equation, because quite frankly, we won't hit the carbon targets unless we bring plastic into that conversation, because it's not a binary option, it's a collective option. We need to look at all aspects. So that's a kind of summary of where we are and what we're doing. So.
And Stephen, from your perspective, looking at the sustainable energy market and the renewable technology marketplace, where are we winning and where can we improve?
Well, firstly, as Neal said, thanks for the kind introduction, John. Good to be here and good to share some thoughts with some colleagues. I think Neal's point is absolutely spot on about finance driving things. We've built technology, new technology, predominantly to take diesel out of the equation, if you like. We all know the legislation around diesel, so I'm not going to get wrapped up in that. But diesel is going to become a thing of the past. And we've designed portable power stations to power building sites, hospitals, dental surgeries, whatever it may be, data centers, etc., etc. And I think the big fear is the fear of change. And that is predominantly led from finance, because obviously construction companies, healthcare sector, if they choose the wrong technology, they're going to be left with egg on their face, number one, but more importantly, they won't be able to control their businesses. And therefore that fear of looking into new ways of doing things is always driven by probably the finance team. And I'm not having to go at finance directors or boards of directors from that perspective. However, we need, as a group, all of us around this table, early adopters, to take advantage of new technology and to take advantage of expertise of the people around the table. And I think we all get wrapped up in our day-to-day workload. And sometimes I think it's fair to say everybody focuses on the day job and don't look particularly 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, 2 years down the line. And that is a frustration, but it is the way it is. We're seeing some significant changes with our product. We've been 4 years in the design of this. We're now in the market. We're now selling these portable power stations and having great success. But people need to adopt them faster, because ultimately it will help them, and it will help them bidding for major contracts when they're using green energy, when they're using renewable technologies. So things are moving, and I think, COVID clearly hasn't helped anybody. But now we're starting to meet face to face and shake people's hands and look into the whites of their eyes. Things are moving with a little bit more pace, which is good to see.
And I think we'll come back to that commercial aspect of some of these solutions in a second, Stephen, because it's a very, very important point. But Tom, OceanR is a relatively new company, a new organization, and you're pedaling very, very fast and learning an awful lot very, very quickly. So same question to you from your perspective in the retail sector, I suppose, in that space. Where are you winning and where is there opportunities for improvement?
Thanks, John. You might send me on the bio you called out at the beginning, because I think it's the best bio that I've had ever, best introduction I've ever had. So appreciate that. First, I'd agree with the two guys and what they've said. We're involved in probably two areas. One is ocean waste, and one is obviously retail, like you pointed out. The positive thing for me is that I believe that it was kicked off by the public. So this was it was a calling for the last 10 years that we were going in the wrong direction. And one of the things that what I've been pleased to witness firsthand is that a lot of that call for help has now been picked up by government, local government, by Brussels, and they are now putting incentives in place that will drive this forward. Whether or not it's fast enough or quick enough, we will soon see. And I think what comes out of COP26 in the next 10 days will be very interesting to see how much pressure that they are willing to put on. So we're involved in, like you said, in the retail space. Circular economy is a term that's thrown around, in our world very, very regularly. And for us, we see that as the biggest opportunity, is to try and get to a circular world, whether it's in fashion, whether it's in ocean plastics. So we're involved in a number of initiatives where we're taking fishing nets. So as in Greencastle up in Donegal, right, a 7-hour drive from where I am at the moment. We're up there earlier this week to pick up 25 tons of fishing nets. which we're then now working with a plastic recycler to wash, shred, and try and get them back into pellet form. But that's been driven by the Department of Environment, which is obviously getting direction from Brussels. So that's where I say that it's really, really positive that there is actually these initiatives that are being put in place, albeit we have a hell of a long way to go. And on the same side, on the retail space, I think the Netherlands have just moved to a point where all brands that are in the Netherlands now have to have a circular economy in place. So if we set that as the benchmark, and I do think that is somewhere where we have to go to, especially in our world. It's the third worst sector after coal and fossil fuels. We have to stop exporting all of our waste. There's like 98% of clothing that goes into secondhand shops gets exported to Africa and third world countries. So that circular economy has to come into play sooner rather than later.
And Tom, you mentioned COP26 there, and literally as we're talking, it's happening right now in Scotland, and this is the global political powwow of the good and great involved in the climate change agenda. And I guess it's worth noting that these COP meetings started in 1995 when Bill Clinton was still president, when DVDs were invented, and when Toy Story was premiered in the United States. Yet we're still talking about taking serious action to combat climate change, which is quite staggering, really. But here's a short, sharp, shock quote from the Guardian newspaper in England a week or so ago. And the headline was, "Apocalypse Soon. Reluctant Middle East Forced to Open Eyes to Climate Crisis." The Middle East is warming at twice the rate of the rest of the world. By the end of the century, if the more dire predictions prove true, Mecca may not be habitable, making the summer Hajj a pilgrimage of peril, even catastrophe potentially. So this is where we are, guys. And again, from your particular perspectives, what do you expect and hope that comes out of COP26 this week? Again, start with you, Neal, perhaps.
Yeah, I think I really appreciate the comments from Steve and Tom there. I absolutely acknowledge and agree with those. I think what I'm hoping for out of COP, but what we're not seeing yet, is a sense of urgency. And I liken it to the COVID threat. For the first time in history of humanity, COVID has affected every corner of the world. It's touched everyone in the world. So consequently, everybody's had to work together to find a solution, because guess what? It's killing us. It's all the leaders, all the scientists, all the big players, all the manufacturing, the pharmaceuticals around the world have had to get their heads together to find a solution. And wow, what a great solution. How quickly did they do that in a year to save us? Thank God for that. Great. Thank you. The climate crisis will make COVID look like a common cold.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's a pure fact. And we're getting stuff coming out of COP26 to say, oh, we're going to stop deforestation within the next 10 years. Well, hang on a minute. But there's a balance to all this. I mean, I've been speaking. I spoke to somebody in Egypt yesterday. I spoke to somebody in Germany recently, and there's a bigger picture to play here. It's not as simple as waving a wand and saying, let's stop cutting trees down, because that could affect the livelihoods of people in third world countries that are relying on that for food and life. So there's a massive balance to take into consideration here, but we have to bring everybody. I think one of the guys said it before. We have to bring everybody into this equation. It's no good that the hierarchy are making all these decisions. We have to have an equitable, equality, diverse. It has to include. It has to be a fully inclusive debate. This and a fully committed set of actions that we have to see outcomes from, and outcomes that are milestoned at shorter time periods rather than putting them somewhere in the distance, because that's waffle. I don't agree. I don't believe any of that, because as you said quite rightly, John, this has been going on for so long now. We've heard it all before. Well, we're in a very very tight window now. We have to make this happen. We all of us here now don't have this, nobody has a silver bullet, but what we all need to do, we have to focus on our individual components of this problem, like a piece of jigsaw, but we've actually got to get our collective heads together and find out a common solution. And that's what we're trying to do at Changing Streams, to bring people together to look at the potential unintended consequences of doing an action, of creating something else. But we've also got to look at, if we reduce plastic there, does it increase the carbon footprint? We've got to look at all those balances. Does it take food off the table from somebody? What does it do? We have to understand, and that's why we're applying research into this business, because we really have to understand it from pure science perspective. So that's kind of a rant, if you like, about at the moment. My frustration.
I think it's a great rant. I really do, and I'm with you 100%. I think the key to this is pace. You know, pace is something that everybody can gather together if everybody's on the same page. And you know, it's all right planting trees and, you know, having EV cars and all the rest of it. You know, what is the real impact? You know, the impact for me is time. You know, there's lots of great businesses out there. And there's hopefully 3 of us on this call now. And I know John's business equally. You know, we've all got solutions that will make a difference. And they will really genuinely make a difference. And what I was saying before about, you know, engaging with people to understand new technologies and new ways of doing things, it's there. So, you know, there's an argument to say, well, you might as well have a go as not have a go, because you're not going to do any more harm. At least you're going to have a go at it. So if we could gather the momentum, as Neal said, and get more people engaged lower down the food chain, people who make decisions on a day-to-day basis. It's okay, Boris and all these boys having these fancy meetings and being chauffeured around in Tesla cars that are being powered by diesel generators behind the workshops. Which I think is a joke in itself, but nonetheless, don't get me on EV, fellas. There's opportunity today for decisions to be made if the people are empowered to make those decisions. And when you look at planning officers, and I do sympathise with them as much as a lot of people don't. There's schemes out there, and we've got one ourselves. You know, we're building a 200 megawatt battery storage development in mid-Sussex. And that's our parent company. And they've done a great job, 5 years in the making. And it's all about planning. And the guys in the planning organizations don't have the authority to say, you know what, this is a great idea, because this is exactly what it's going to do. This is exactly how it's going to impact the local community, the wider community. It's going to be green. It's going to be noise-free, pollution-free, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So for me, it's all about pace. And if we can get that, then I think we've got a fighting chance.
Some good themes emerging here. Tom, your thoughts on this, specifically around what you expect to see out of COP26 and what you hope to see happen subsequently.
Yeah, I share the frustration that's in the voice of the two guys as well. You know, it is incredibly frustrating, and we are up against it. I think for me, I'm quite cynical. I never really expect much to happen. What I would love to happen would be that we have just witnessed, and Neal touched on it, we've just witnessed COVID for the last 18 months, and how the world and nations got behind that. And it's at the, you know, it's on every radio station. It's at the, you know, it's in Ireland, in RT News, it's on our primary website every single day. If that was inverted into talking about, you know, carbon offsetting, or, you know, carbon offsetting goals for the country, wouldn't that be a positive? The one thing that I think I would like to see is something that is disruptive, you know, something that just shakes people up a little bit. So, and I'm going to throw a curveball out there that, you know, David Attenborough's been making some incredible movies recently. And one of the things on that is that if you told everybody to have 2 children, we'd all, you know, the population would eventually level out. In reality, something like that is, you know, very harsh to recommend. But if that's the answer, why aren't we saying that this needs to happen? I'm not an advocate for that, by the way. I'm just saying that is the level that we need to be making decisions at. Banning single-use plastic or causing it hazardous waste would be something like that as well. But there needs to be disruption, and there needs to be some, how would I put it? There needs to be some serious points laid out that will make the world stand up and make industry stand up, that this is actually something that we drastically need to take hold of as a collective.
I think it's quite important that Tom, really good point. If anyone's looking for a recommendation for a book, if you haven't read it, A Life on Our Planet by David Attenborough is a great book. It takes you through the preceding decades to where we are now, and gives you kind of two options of where we can go in the future, a fork in the road, if you like. And it talks about the great acceleration. It talks about the human impact. I mean, if you think about it, there's 8 billion people plus on the earth now. So in 1980s, I think the scientists did a survey and concluded at that time, about 4.8 billion people on the earth, that the earth could provide the resources, the services and resources that the human population needed to survive. Fast forward to where we are now, and we're kind of overshoot. That's why we have overshoot day, because we're taking from the earth at the rate of 1.7 times it can provide. So we're actually in negative equity with the earth. And the only way that the earth can continue to provide those goods and services to us is by reducing the natural biosphere. So we need urgent action. But the difficulty with this, unlike COVID, is it's like a tanker. You know, you're trying to reverse. You can't all of a sudden change the temperature just overnight. You know, we saw it with COVID, the impact that COVID had in terms of reducing those carbon emissions, because industry virtually stopped, came to a standstill. But we can't survive on that. There's got to be a balance somewhere. It's got to be sensible, joined up thinking by a lot of people to find proper solutions.
I mean, I think the point is what John said. You know, it's not. This isn't a shock to anybody. This has been coming for donkey's years, and everybody's been talking about it for donkey's years, but nobody's actually done anything. You know, nobody's implemented policy that says, right, you know, as Tom said, if it's 2 kids each, that's it. It's 2 kids each. Or if it's you can't put coal in your fire to heat your house. Don't put coal in your fire to heat your house. That's it. End of conversation. And as you just rightly said, you know, when Boris announced on whatever date that we're in lockdown, everybody stayed inside.
Yeah.
The majority of people stayed inside.
Yeah.
And if it was the majority that did it, we'd be in a far better place now than we were, 2 years ago. So I agree 100%. Sorry, John, we're ranting.
No, this is all good stuff, and clearly there's a lot of energy and passion and focus from us sitting around the table on this issue, because we're living and breathing it every single day. But I want to come on to this idea of sustainable solutions, because sustainable is all fine and dandy, and it's a term that's kicked around, and it's very popular at a corporate level to flavor corporate reports with sustainability this and sustainability that. However, for real change to occur, for the change that we're sort of talking about here in this conversation to really happen at a grassroots level, sustainable ideas and solutions need to be not only sustainable but scalable, practical, affordable, and commercially viable to have any real chance of success, because there's lots of great ideas, but some of them will just never see the light of day. So a question, let's start with you, Neal, on this. And where are the opportunities for sustainable, scalable, and practical solution in the construction sector right now? And what will be the catalyst for a sea change in how the sector conducts its business in the future, given that it is a relatively conservative sector and resistant to change?
Yeah, good question, John. I think we all know we're in. The Guardian, I think, described it the other day. This could be determined as the waste age, and the construction sector is well behind the curve on managing waste. We're seeing waste increasing at a rate of knots, and that's worrying. And as Tom said before, or Stephen said, it's a lot of this is getting exported, and it's ridiculous. We need to slow down the waste. We need to slow down what we're consuming. We need to reduce the amount that we're consuming, because we overconsume, and consequently there's overwaste. But what we are seeing now is, as Tom pointed out before, a stronger move towards a circular economy, which I absolutely support 100%. The only caveat I'd say in that is where plastics are concerned, because I'm worried about plastics, because there's so many different types of plastics, and we have chemists on the team. We've got doctors and scientists on the team that will talk to you in far more detail about this and knowledge than me. But basically, a lot of plastics can only be recycled 2 or 3 times, and you still need fossil fuels to recycle them. So we're moving now into, I don't disagree with recycling plastics, by the way, and what Tom's doing with fishing nets is absolutely vital to save the marine life. But what we're seeing now is we're seeing grown solutions rather than mined solutions. And what I mean by that is people are using mycelium, mushrooms, people are using hemp. We've got to start thinking of a post-waste world. We've got to start thinking, can we grow our materials rather than mining them? We've got to start thinking of miscanthus, elephant grass, if you like. And we're seeing developments now in those areas where miscanthus is being trialed for a type of breeze block, if you like, and it's being tested for its structural stability. We're seeing it also being used for insulation because it's the second fastest grass after bamboo. It grows about 6 foot a year. If we can get that happening in the UK, well, great, and other parts of the world. What we've got to be careful of is that the industry won't adopt these solutions unless it's scalable, unless they have the scalability to deliver on the demands of the industry. And they automatically revert to the trusted names, Kingspan. Let's not talk about them in Grenfell, but there you go. But these are things that are happening now. We've got things like hempcrete and miscrete being used as concrete solutions to reduce the carbon impacts. So we are moving towards lots more natural materials, and we need to use nature because nature's free. Nature's free. Why don't we use more nature? Stop digging it up. Just let's grow it. Yeah. Let's use it out to sea, harness the sea energy, which we're doing, harness the sun. Let's grow stuff because we'll find solutions. We've got some clever engineers in the world and they can find solutions for this. So that's the way the industry is moving now. We're seeing all these things coming on stream, and I'm optimistic about that changing the way the industry responds to this and the type of materials that they start selecting.
I think again, Neal, I couldn't agree more. I mean, from an energy point of view, I think the construction companies get a bad rap, and it's not really their fault. It's a situation I find, and we find as a business that they switch to the default position, and when they need sustainable or green energy, or they need power on a site or on a development or whatever it may be, the default setting is go and hire a diesel generator. Yeah. Now, those days are going to go, whether they like it or not. And, the grid infrastructure in the UK is creaking at the knees and has been for 20 years. And the construction companies get penalised with massive grid connection costs, which ultimately then go to the utilities to build and rebuild the infrastructure that's out there. Now, we're offering solutions today, using battery technology, which might be powered by solar, might be powered by wind, might be powered from the grid, but it'll be powered from the grid with a green tariff off peak. And so your discharged energy for running the building site during the day is green energy. Now, these solutions are out there, but it's about adopting the technology. Neal said about great engineers out there. Some of the best engineers that are out there are British engineers. I've done a lot of work in the Middle East over the last 20 odd years. Most of the engineers out there on the large scale programs are British fellas. The Khalifa Tower was built and designed by a British engineer. So, we've got the skill sets, and, we want countries to adopt our technologies and our thoughts and our methodologies, but do it with a little bit of pace. Going back to what I said before, it's there, try it before you buy it, if you like. And if it proves to work, then you can buy it from us. So these solutions are there. And I think around the table, we've probably all got similar stories to tell as is coming out this morning.
Tom, what sort of a reaction are you getting to your product line? And if it's positive, explain how it's positive. But if you're also experiencing some sort of setbacks or sluggish response. Do you understand what the blockers are and why the uptake is not happening as fast as you'd like?
Yeah, it's good. It's two good questions. So first question is, is there being warmly received? And yes, it is. So we, first and foremost, we're kind of like a water leisure clothing brand, I suppose. But we do partner with a number of organizations around the world, mainly in the hospitality sector. So we'll do a lot of the large resorts in the Maldives, the Caribbean, this kind of stuff. Unfortunately, the process of collecting waste, we'll partner with the charity that's collecting waste from the ocean, or that's already sending plastic bottles to landfill. Those charities are already set up, and we might donate to them on a couple of times a year, but they're pretty much doing all the heavy lifting at that level. They'll then send them to a processing plant, and then that processing plant will turn it into yarn, and then the yarn gets turned into thread, and then the thread gets turned into fabric. So that process is a costly process. So unfortunately, at the moment, if people want to move to a sustainable clothing option for their merchandise, for their corporation or for their organization, it's more expensive than the €3 t-shirt that they're buying at the moment that's been produced in a third world-ish, I don't want to call any countries out, environment. So you might end up taking a call with people and say, this is fantastic. We really want to move to sustainability. Can you meet the same pricing that we currently have? And at the moment, we just can't. Until you get to the scale, you physically can't do that. So on one hand, absolutely, there's a number of people that really, really, really are all about going sustainable. On the other hand, there's people that are really, really, really interested in going sustainable, but they want it just for their own marketing advantage. I have absolutely zero problem with that, because it gets the story of moving into a sustainable world out there. So the more people that market it, the better it is. And then you have people that are just not interested, or it hasn't hit home just yet. And it's amazing the pockets around the world that it has taken off, and in some places it hasn't. I suppose the other thing says, back to Neal said, like, one of the things that we would get called out on quite a bit is that we have, that we're recycling plastic, and it does absolutely have a timeline, so you can't put a recycled plastic bottle into a t-shirt and then take the t-shirt and put it back into a plastic bottle and back into a t-shirt again. So we've been working with a number of, we constantly work, we don't just work with that, we work with organic cottons. We've got a number of labels and things that are made from recycled banana skin and pineapple skin, and we work with hemps. And so we have a team that looking for new solutions, and seaweed was one that came in yesterday, where a guy said he's about 5 years off being able to produce fabric from seaweed. And I said, bring it on. If that's something that we can sell and use, 100% can. But the technology isn't at that level just yet, but it will get there. So a year and a half ago, we were presented with a compostable t-shirt. And I said, as soon as it goes into landfill, it'll biodegrade and it'll compost due to the heat in the landfill. After washing it, I think we got up to like 6 times, it fell apart. So it's getting there. It needs to be you need to be able to wash it 50 or 100 times before you could actually retail that. But there is people coming up with those solutions. And one of your points at the beginning was, where is the opportunity? And the opportunity for me is in those technologies, is in the circular environment, and which is mainly looking at supply chain. To be honest, there's no massive technology that's required, or new invention that's required. It's simply getting creative with your supply chain and how to direct it away from landfill. And there's some amazing companies out there that are taking care of the waste issue. I call one guy out. There's a Dublin company at the moment, Thriftify, and they've basically created the platform to for secondhand clothing shops to basically come online, so that you can, instead of buying fast fashion, you can come on and say, these guys, I am going to buy on Thriftify, and they'll, you can go and pick secondhand clothing for the same price that you get your fast fashion for. And that means now that stuff is being directed away from being exported to Africa and other countries, because these guys are being creative about why don't we put all the secondhand shops online in Ireland and the UK. Like it's fantastic. So there is these people out there, but one of the things at the beginning was, these people need the backing, and they need people, they need VCs, they need investors to get behind them to be able to give them the resources. Just like if you were in the fossil fuel industry, 30, 40 years ago, there was huge investments made then into those industries. So, and on the positive, those are happening. There is backing of these companies. So that is a positive. Just to end on that.
I think that Neal mentioned a couple of headlines coming out of COP26 just this week, and one in particular, the former governor of the Bank of England, Mark Carney, is rallying investment firms and VCs to invest trillions of dollars and pounds into clean technology. So, I mean, when this starts to happen, I think that, Thriftify or other companies like this may find it easier to access funding to develop their ideas and bring them to market and scale them accordingly, and then make a little bit of a difference in different corners of the world. So there's lots of things going on, I think, here. But gents, I'm conscious of our time, and I have one last question. I know you wanted to get in there, Neal, but maybe you can wrap your thoughts into this question.
I've got so much to say, but
there's lots to talk about here. I absolutely know that.
Go on all day.
We certainly
Tom,
could.
Just let me say one thing, Tom. Talk to me after this separately, because I've got a solution for your textile problem that's happening quicker.
Very good. Very good. There you go, Tom. A good connection there for you. But last question for you guys. I'm going to start with Stephen on this one, then go to Tom, and then Neal, you can have the last word. But for some reason, you're all on global TV, gentlemen, and all the politicians and all the business leaders have decided to tune in to watch you speak. So my question to you, and again, Stephen, let's start with you. What's your message to the audience, and how can people find out more about what you do?
My message to the audience would be relatively straightforward. It's a great question, by the way, as all your questions are. My message would be, take time to look at technologies that are in the market to support you and help you today. They're there right now. And as I've said before, take the time to invest the time, look at different technologies that can support your business for the short, medium, and long term. Our solutions are sustainable, they're scalable, and they're affordable. And we want to engage with organizations, particularly in the construction sector and the healthcare sector, where we can mitigate energy costs, provide them with a green energy solution, which will ultimately help them in the long term. That's it. There's no complicated stories here to be had. We've built and designed, tested, and are selling power stations. And as the great Carroll Shelby said, when he said in an interview when he built the Ford GT40 to take on Enzo Ferrari at Le Mans, he said, I'm Carroll Shelby, I build race cars. Well, I'm Stephen Jones and we build power stations. And if anybody wants to come and have a look, go onto our website, talk to us. We're not looking to sell boxes. We're looking for long-term solutions with long-term relationships. And we're not greedy people, but we want to make a difference. And I think what we've got makes a difference.
Tom, same question to you, sir.
Very straightforward. Be brave, make the tough decisions, and generations to come will thank you.
Okay, thank you. Neal?
Great one. That was great, Steve and Tom. Love that. It's hard to follow those. I just reaffirm the the desperate need to make urgent decisions, not just make decisions, but take real action and make that happen. Invest in local communities, invest not just in the large companies that are doing great things, that are recognized names that will get you votes, but actually invest in the people on the ground that are actually making a difference and doing these things and putting their lives on the line to trial and design and develop new ideas and solutions. Have belief in those people, because those people, there's millions of them around the world. Have some belief and have some investments and have some support. Put that support structure, infrastructure in place, and you'll see massive results very quickly.
Well, gentlemen, I picked up a number of themes there: pace, sense of urgency, being brave, making the hard decisions, pushing things forward, and taking the time to listen and observe and invest in some of these wonderful sustainable ideas that we've talked about today. So, gentlemen, Neal Maxwell, Tom Cotter, Stephen Jones, thank you all so much for joining me today. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been A Bit of Business. Thank you so much for watching. All the best for now.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.